Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my top 36 running back rankings and tiers for week number 11 of the 2024 fantasy football season. But before we can get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you're doing up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get to my top 36 running back rankings and tiers for week number 11 of the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the no-brainer running back ones tier with my running backs 1 through 7. At number 1, we have Christian McCaffrey. Now, in his debut game with the San Francisco 49ers, as he has missed a majority of this season until last week, he was the running back 10 in PPR. Obviously, nothing to write home about when you compare it to what we're used to with Christian McCaffrey, but ultimately, Kyle Shanahan has proven to us that they want to use a workhorse running back on this team. They're not going to work in Garendo. They're not going to work in Mason. Christian McCaffrey is going to see a boatload of touches game in and game out. So Christian McCaffrey, when he plays, you start him as a must-start running back. So running back 1 up against the Seattle Seahawks is very obtainable for Christian McCaffrey. At number 2, we have Joe Mixon of the Houston Texans going up against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World this week. Now, the Dallas Cowboys defense is as soft as it gets. Joe Mixon is going to beat the brakes off of this defense like prime Mike Tyson. Joe Mixon has basically been a top 8 running back in every single game in which he actually completed a game, outside of one where he was the running back 15 up against the Jets. My confidence level is incredibly high in Joe Mixon going up against Dallas on Monday Night Football. At number 3, we have Devon Achane of the Dolphins going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, when it comes to Devon Achane with Tua Tagovailoa, prior to last week, he was a top 3 running back in every single game that Tua Tagovailoa played, but as always, right, a great trend ends. Last week, he was the running back 24 up against the LA Rams, but going up against a Raiders defense that is very exploitable here. I do expect Devon Achane to hop back on the horse like his name was John Marston and put up another top 3 game. Next up, we got Bijan Robinson. Now, Bijan Robinson has been on fire over the last 5-6 games at this point. Since week number 6, he has been a top 9 running back in every single game. Now, he started off the season on the wrong foot, but now he's doing the hokey pokey correctly, and he is a guy that you need to be playing in your lineup. I get that going up against the Denver Broncos, this isn't the most wet dream spot, but the Denver Broncos defense actually isn't as elite against the run as you would think they would be. So Bijan Robinson here again, when a guy is playing this well, you just have to keep ranking him this high. Next up, we got Alvin Kamara of the Saints going up against the Browns at home in New Orleans. Now, Alvin Kamara's teammates are all hurt, right? No Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed. Their wide receiver 1 is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, so they have to pepper the ball to Alvin Kamara all game long. Going up against the Cleveland Browns defense that has been very underwhelming this season. I think Alvin Kamara, due to sheer volume alone, he's going to get 18 plus carries. He could potentially see 12 targets in this game because we know Derek Carr loves to check the ball down. So up against the Cleveland Browns, Alvin Kamara is in a smash spot. Next up, we got Derrick Henry, Tractor Cito going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Now, Derrick Henry, another one of these guys that's basically a condom wrap around your fantasy football team, game in and game out. Last week was a bit of a down game as the running back 14, but this guy has 14 touchdowns in 10 total games. He has played in 10 games and he scored a touchdown or more in every single game. Again, Derrick Henry. All of these guys are no-brainers. You didn't watch today's video for some crazy intricate breakdown of why you want to start Derrick Henry. You already knew you were going to start him. Maybe you just wanted to see how high up I would rank him. The Steelers matchup isn't the best, but again, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry, so you're going to start him. At number 8, we have Kyren Williams going up against the Patriots in New England. Now, last week, I really thought that was going to be the game for Kyren Williams where he goes nuclear, where he puts up a crazy 25-plus point performance. Maybe he even scores 30 points because we've already seen him do that once this season. The Dolphins defense is sorry up against the run. They cannot stop the run to save their lives, but last week, magically, I don't know what happened, even as a Dolphins fan, they finally figured it out after years of the Dolphins getting a train ran on them Bobby Bacala style by the run. They finally figured it out. They stopped Kyren Williams as the running back 21, but we know how involved Kyren is in this offense. We know how involved he is inside of the red zone, and up against the Patriots, they should be able to get to the red zone to punch Kyren Williams into the end zone. He's another guy that just has so many touchdowns, a shit ton of touchdowns. 10 touchdowns thus far this season through 9 games. Next up, we move on into the lower tier, no-brainer running back ones. Again, all guys you already know that you got to start. Jahmyr Gibbs going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars defense stood pretty tall up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings last week, but I don't really believe they're to be able to do that up against Detroit, despite the fact that Jared Goff was playing like a blind kid out there throwing 5 interceptions last week. Even so, up against Houston, Jahmyr Gibbs was the running back 16. This is a guy that's going to be a top 16, top 18 running back every single week. And going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars is definitely a sweet matchup. Shout out to Kick Butowski. So I do expect Jahmyr Gibbs to go off in this game. Next up, we got Breece Hall going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Breece Hall has been in a bit of a doozy over the last 3 games, running back 32, 29, and 18, which is definitely very underwhelming compared to what you're used to for Breece Hall. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, and while the offense looked completely and utterly limp dick, when you're going up against the Colts defense, this has to be a bounce back game for the Jets. This has to be a bounce back game for Rodgers, and this has to be a bounce back game for Breece Hall. Next up at number 10, we got Jonathan Taylor, JT, going up against the Jets defense in MetLife. Now, Jonathan Taylor with the return of Anthony Richardson definitely gives me a lot more confidence, because with Joe Flacco, they really do want to air the ball out a lot more, but with Anthony Richardson, they keep things very safe. They say, hey, Anthony Richardson, let's make sure you don't throw the ball 3,000 times a game, because if you do, you're probably going to throw some absolutely buffoonish 3 interceptions. You're going to throw the ball directly into 7 guys fucking surrounding the receiver like the goddamn Secret Service. And there's going to be interceptions. There's going to be bad plays. So let's hammer the rock with Jonathan Taylor. And I believe that's going to be the game plan here with AR. Next up, we got Chase Brown, CB, and we ain't talking about Chalupa Batman, going up against the Los Angeles Chargers in LA. Back-to-back games inside the top 4. Now, once they start utilizing Khalil Herbert a little bit more, I think that will throw a wrench into the situation. But as of right now, Khalil Herbert did just arrive there last week. He fucking fumbled on his first touch as a Cincinnati Bengal. So as of right now, I think Chase Brown's kind of just a locked and loaded top 12 back. Closing out the top 12, we got Kenneth Walker III going up against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. Now, Kenneth Walker is another guy that is one of those guys that you just have to start, but he is on a bit of a downward spiral, right? He's fallen off the wall like Humpty fucking Dumpty, right? Running back 20 prior to the bye, running back 38 the week prior. Hopefully, Geno Smith getting back DK Metcalf, the offense gets right. The feng shui of the offense is back, and they end up being able to perform, because this could be a game where they are getting their teeth kicked in and they're not able to run the ball as much, which is definitely a worry. But again, Kenneth Walker is super involved even in games that they do end up getting plowed. So Kenneth Walker should be fine as a running back 1 who's not technically a running back 1, or technically he is because he's the running back 12, but technically Josh Jacobs, Kareem Hunt, they're not technically running back 1s, but they're in that range of guys that are legitimately no-brainer starts. Next up, we got Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers going up against the Chicago Bears in Chi-Town, limited on Thursday with the quad injury, but he is coming out the bye week, so I do expect him to play. Now, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sin, so you want to make sure that you follow that situation, but I do believe he'll be good to go. Now, going up against the Chicago Bears is definitely far from the best matchup on earth, in my opinion, but I do believe that Jordan Love Me Tender, Love Me Sweet will be able to get up big in this game, because Caleb Williams sucks dick. It is as simple as that. And we're not talking about his real life sexual preferences. We're talking about the fact that the guy can't read a defense. He fucking sucks ass. So not Kareem Hunt, he's the next guy. So Josh Jacobs should be in a game where they're up big, able to run the ball out a ton. Next up, we got Kareem Hunt going up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. The Isaiah Pacheco return is imminent at this point, potentially next week up against the Panthers in Carolina. Atlanta. But this week, up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, there will be no Pacheco, and Kareem Hunt will be the lead back on the team. Going up against the Buffalo Bills is a great matchup for running backs. Kareem Hunt has been very reliable this season when starting. Over his last 5 games, he's been a top 11 running back in 4 of 5 games. He's also a guy that has a huge nose for the end zone. He has scored over the last 4 games 4 total touchdowns, 1 game with 2 games with 1, and 1 game with 0, which was last week. But even in that game, he was the running back 9, right? While he isn't his old self, Unk still got it. The guy had 7 catches last week. Let's call a spade a spade. Kareem Hunt is still good enough to produce in fantasy. Final guy in this tier is J.K. Dobbins going up against the Bengals at home in L.A. Now, the team of the Chargers has tried to get Justin Herbert, the pervert, cooking a lot more. They've been trying to throw the ball at a much higher rate, and the integration of Gus Edwards back into the offense has definitely kind of thrown a wrench into things. I already used that analogy earlier, but it has really sucked for J.K. Dobbins. But ultimately, going up against the Bengals defense that would get gashed if you handed the ball to fucking Big Justice and the Rizzler. If you handed the ball to me, I would be able to gash that Cincinnati defense like I was Jason. So up against the Bengals, this feels like a bounce back spot for J.K. Dobbins, who's been a very reliable running back 2 all season, with the upside of being a top 12 guy, which is something he's done multiple times this season. Next up, we move on into the 3rd tier, the running back 2 tier, headlined by the Sombrero Man, Ron Jones, going up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. He's off the injury report with the ribs injury, so no need to panic. Aaron Jones is one of these guys that's just going to be in the running back 2 tier every single week. He's a reliable top 24 running back basically every single game. Sure, is he going to have games much better than that? Of course, where he's flirting with the top 10 finish. He's going to have games where he slightly falls outside of the top 24, but he's going to get you like 12 points every week, and he has the upside to score 20 plus, especially if Sam Darnold figures things out and stops playing like he was in the movie Bird Box and he has a blindfold over his eyes, which is exactly what happened last week up against Jacksonville, which did really hurt Aaron Jones, because that was a game up against Mac Jones where you expect the Vikings to be laying the smackdown, brother, and ultimately they didn't actually do that. Next up, we got James Cook up against the Chiefs. Now, in any other matchup, James Cook is a no-brainer running back 1. Doesn't even matter, no ifs, ands, or buts like Miley Cyrus. But up against the Chiefs, a defense that locks down the running back position week in and week out, I'm afraid, I am petrified of James Cook. Now, again, you're probably still going to have to play him. He's James Cook. He will be able to potentially elevate past this matchup. He has the skills to pay the bills. He's another guy that has a strong nose for the end zone. But Josh Allen can vulture touchdowns, and again, the Chiefs are elite against the run, so I don't want to get too high up on James Cook. Next up, we got Ramondre Stevenson, and it's Ramondre Steven season, potentially. Now, Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Los Angeles Rams. This is a good matchup for him, and I say this every week with Ramondre, so I apologize if I sound like a broken record. Ramondre's either going hard in the motherfucking paint, right, as a top 14 running back, potentially a top 5 running back, beating the breaks off of a defense, right? Blowing the defense's back out. Or he's like the running back 28 or worse. And if you look at his game log, that's exactly what this season has been. Running back 7, then 13, 80, 38, 4, 44, 5, 7, 28. So he's either going nuclear or ending up fisting your team directly in the ass with like one of those big Hulk hand things you used to be able to get as a kid. Me and my friends used to get those where it's like you get 2 Hulk hands, like the bop 'em, sock 'em, you know what I'm talking about? Or what's that called? Like the POW things, like the pillows on your hands, you go bam, bam. You just beat the shit out of each other. Me and all my friends had those. Ramondre Stevenson's either beating the defense up or he's beating your fantasy team up. Either way, though, you probably gotta rank him this high. Next up, we got David Montgomery. Now, we know who David Montgomery is. He's going to be a top 18 running back basically every single week, and he is going to be productive in most games. That's what David Montgomery is, right? His one down game, he was hurt up against the Vikings. So we know who David Montgomery is. We know the production level that he puts in and game out up against the Jaguars. I expect this Lions offense to be able to percolate. David Montgomery's another one of these guys that loves the end zone, so my confidence level is very high with him. A guy whose my confidence level isn't the highest in is DeAndre Swift. I was really flirting with ranking him lower, but even with the Caleb Williams disaster classes, He was the running back 11 in week 8, the running back 19 in week 9. Now, last week he was the running back 32, doesn't do diddly squat for you. But those 3 games, Caleb was bad, and 2 of them, DeAndre Swift was fine. So I don't want to bury him too hard. But again, I don't think anyone's really that excited to play DeAndre Swift because, again, the Chicago Bears offense is just really, 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 really bad right now. And if you can't move the football offensively, throwing the ball, then you're not going to be in a great opportunity to run the ball a ton, especially if you're down up against the Packers. Next up, we got the low-end running back 2 tier here, headlined by Tony Pollard. Now, Tony Pollard going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Tennessee. Tony Pollard's another one of these guys that's just a top 24 running back basically every single week. The fact that Tajay Spears is back and playing as many snaps as he is bumps Tony Pollard down a ton because I would have really liked to have him in the tier above. And the fact that Will Levis played so well last week tells you that he's in for just looking like a complete and utter piece of shit this week, right? Where he's throwing the ball terribly, he's fumbling the ball, doing all the Will Levis stuff that you're used to, especially because it's up against the Vikings. Some better matchups, I will rank him higher, but this is not a better matchup. Next up, we got Najee Harris going up against the Baltimore Ravens at home in Pittsburgh. Najee has proven to us he's another one of these guys that's been a reliable top 24 running back for the four straight weeks inside the top 20. He practiced in full on Thursday with the ankle, so I believe he's going to be good to go. Now, just like Tony Pollard, the fact that the team is kind of pushing the narrative of using Jaylen Warren more and more makes me not feel like, hey, I love Najee Harris, guys. Let's fucking get down on our knees and give this guy the Sukala Mink, right? Let's give this guy the fucking Gawk 9000 special, right? Let's suck this guy dry like our name was Mia Malkova, right? We're not going to do that. Again, going up against the Baltimore Ravens is not the best matchup. It's a good matchup, but it's not the best matchup. They want to use Jaylen Warren more. So again, I don't want to get too overzealous and rank him too high, but I also don't want to get too low on him and rank him too low and look like a fool with your pants on the ground and your hat turned sideways, right, because of how productive he's been. So I feel confident in my ranking. I don't think I'm too low on him, and I also don't think I pushed him up too high. Final guy in this tier. Low-end running back 1s, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. Now, Nick Chubb, I moved him up a little bit because I do believe coming out of the bye week, in a great spot against the Saints, a 5-star matchup like it's GTA, I do believe that Nick Chubb, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, will have his best game yet. Now, he has been as efficient as using a Kit Kat bar wrapper as a condom. That does not work. Do not try that. Don't try to use a Doritos bag, a Snickers bar wrapper. It does not work. So Nick Chubb going up against the Saints is a good spot for him. He's been getting fed 15 carries or more in back-to-back games, but he's been inefficient. Hopefully coming out the bye week, he looks better. But again, I wouldn't be biting my tongue. I don't even know if that's the correct analogy here, but I wouldn't be banging the drum too hard for Nick Chubb. Frankly, if you wanted to rank him a tier lower, I wouldn't really argue with you. I did put him this high, though, because I do think that Jameis will be able to have this offense looking right. I like the matchup, and I think Nick Chubb coming out the bye should be the best version of himself. Next up, we got the high-end running back 3s tier, and this is kind of just the final tier of guys where it's like, you play them, okay. Sure, could be way better. This is kind of like a last-ditch effort, right? Last-ditch effort, then you get to the YOLO tier, and the YOLO tier part 2, where it's like, okay, you're basically fucked. You're throwing a dart at the dartboard from not only across the bar, you're in the bar parking lot, and there's like, you're throwing it through the fucking, what's that called? Like the thing Santa comes down the chimney, and you're trying to bounce it like a tomahawk trick shot, throwing knife trick shot in Call of Duty, where like bounces off a million things and hits the bullseye, right? That's what's happening once you get lower than this. So with Rico Dowdle going up against the Texans, with Dak Prescott, he'd be ranked far higher. With Cooper Rush, you're kind of just like, okay, he'll be a top 30 running back. Gonna get me 10 points potentially, but I'm not excited. Who in their right mind would be excited to play Rico Dowdle without Dak Prescott with Cooper Rush up against the Texans? No one should be. Next up, we got Alexander Mattison going up against the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Alexander Mattison, prior to the bye, he shit the bed. He had a terrible performance, but the Dolphins defense, again, they have their legs open for the taking, consensually, of course, for Alexander Mattison to have a good game. The Dolphins' run defense reeks to high heaven, and Alexander Mattison is the guy in Las Vegas, even though they suck ass. They are a terrible team. Their quarterback is terrible. Their receiver core is mediocre. Alexander Mattison himself isn't very good, but he does catch a decent amount of passes, and he has been able to find the end zone, and he's been productive this season. He has multiple games inside of the top 20, 4 games, that is, in 9 games. Again, it's not the highest hit rate. He's not the best bet ever. We've already made that very clear, but if you have to start him, not the worst. Now we get into, like, you have to start him. You're praying to the gods above. You're praying to the football gods. You're praying to every god that you support. You are literally doing everything possible. You are wearing, like, I talk about this all the time, right? Where when you think it's a snow day, at least this is how it was in New Jersey, where I grew up. Oh, wear your pajamas inside out. Fucking brush your teeth lefty. Wear your socks inside out. Throw your pillow in the freezer, right? And that's going to be like some fucking crazy witchcraft that's going to make it snow, right? That's what people thought. And I kind of believed it. I never did any of those things, but I did believe, you know, maybe if I did do it, maybe if I wasn't scared to put my fucking pillow in the fridge and look like a or in the freezer, it looked like a crazy person. Maybe it would have worked. So the YOLO tier, before we talk about the YOLO, that's the motto. Shout out Drake. Shout out Lil Wayne. We have to talk about our friends, our sponsor over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and you sign up using promo code Notorious and click on the link in the video description, you receive your free pick, which today is Victor Wembanyama, higher than half a total point. You match that with any other player playing in the NBA, not in the Spurs, or any player in the NFL. If both of your picks hit, you receive 3 times what you put in your pick'em. If you put in multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. If you're watching this on, say, Saturday, maybe it's not Wembanyama, maybe it's an NFL player higher than half of a total yard. If it's not Wembanyama, it could also be an NBA player higher than half a total point. Plus, not only to get the free pick, you get a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Make sure you guys check that out. Promo code Notorious, or click on the link in the video description. So when it comes to Tyjae Spears, we talked about it with Pollard. Them ramping up Tyjae Spears is terrible for Tony Pollard, but it doesn't mean you want to start Tyjae Spears, because even with the ramp-up, he scored just 8 points. He's also going up against the Vikings. Why is he ranked this high? Because I feel confident in the amount of volume he will get. Next up, we got Travis Etienne. Now, going up against the Lions is far from an ideal matchup, but we know Etienne's going to get 10-plus carries, just like he did last week. Now, will he actually be able to do anything with them is a question that you have to think about yourself, and my opinion is he's not going to do shit with them. His yards per carry on the season has been pretty decent, 4.3, nothing to write home about, but not terrible. But recently, it hasn't looked the best. The team looks bad with Mac Jones, but Etienne's the guy, even though I think Tank Bigsby's better, so we'll rank him here. Next up, we got Audric Estime, tight end. This is the running back video, Nick. Running back of the Denver Broncos. They threw Javonte to the curb. They threw Jaleel McLaughlin to the curb. It's Audric Estime season. 14 carries for 53 yards. Now, if they continue to run with Audric Estime season in mind, Estime could become a league winner with how good the Broncos offense has been. If they go back to their old ways, Javonte, Jaleel, have the ball, then Estime could be a big bust, like you haven't cranked one off in a week. So going up against the Falcons is a good spot for him. But again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like last week, one game of getting touches where you were okay magically now means that you got to fucking throw this guy into your lineup. He's a great waiver ad, though. Final tier here, the YOLO waiver wire, not the YOLO waiver wire, the YOLO plays part 2, beginning with Jaylen Warren, who had 14 carries for 66 yards last week, 2 receptions for 29 yards. He misses practice on Thursday with the back. Got to monitor that, make sure he's A-okay, because if he doesn't play, then you don't want to play him. And if he doesn't play, we want to bump up Najee Harris from the low-end running back 2 tier up into the running back 2 tier right above. Going up against the Ravens is a fine spot for him. Gonna get a bunch of carries. That's where he belongs. Next up, we got Mr. Algier. Algier picks up the scraps for Bijan Robinson, but we know sometimes the Falcons get a little bit funky. Hands on your knees, right? And they just hand the ball to Algier on the goal line, and that's what you would need for Algier to be successful. Raheem Mostert got completely phased out of the offense and didn't do anything last week. He had the clutch catch, but besides that, no carries. Let's see if that was just, hey, Raheem, you fumbled in week 9 against the Bills. You kind of cost us the game. Get on the pine. But it's okay. You'll be fine in week 11 up against the Raiders. Or is it, hey, we want to use Jalen Wright more. Raheem Mostert, you old bastard. You can go fuck yourself. I don't know yet, so that's why he's ranked here. Next up, we got Gus Bus, who saw a unruly amount of carries last week. Why is he getting that many carries? 10 for 55. We know Gus Edwards is another one of these guys that kind of just has the nose for the end zone. One of these guys that you never actually want to start, but randomly he scores a touchdown. And up against the Bengals, that is randomly very possible. So he's ranked this high. Final guy here, Big Justice Hill, bringing the boom on Jimmy Kimmel up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we know who Justice Hill is, right? I say this every week. A blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. A broken clock is right twice a day. Sometimes the clock is right. Sometimes the clock is very, very, very wrong. Most of the time, it's very wrong. But because of that upside, but because of the offense that he's in, he'll get ranked this high. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. Check me out on Twitter at NotoriousFantasy. Check out Underdog, promo code Notorious to get your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys long time. Throw the love up like I'm fucking Taylor Swift. I think she does that. Maybe she doesn't. Love you long time. Have a great one. As always, good boy.